The Symphony of Everyday Chaos. Chapter 1. The Whistle of the Kettle. It was the same chaotic sound every morning in the Hallows family house. The shrill, high-pitched whistle of the kettle echoed through the walls at precisely 7:15 a.m. Maya Hallows, sitting at the kitchen table, glared at the kettle as though it had personally offended her. Her hair was tousled from sleep, and her hand clutched her mug a little too tightly. The scent of coffee filled the air, but her attention was divided between her smartphone and the time ticking away on the wall clock. In the living room, just beyond the kitchen, her husband, Elliot, frantically shuffled through a stack of papers, already dressed in a wrinkled shirt and tie that screamed of last-minute decisions. Their 5-year-old son, Jamie, was nowhere to be seen, although the sound of his chaotic presence filled the house in subtle but persistent waves of plastic, cars skidding across the floor, the rapid pounding of small feet, and an occasional crash followed by a tiny voice exclaiming, "The Hallows house wasn't a mess in the traditional sense. It was clean enough, functional enough. But it was a house where the daily rhythm had no conductor, where the melody of life often erupted into discordant notes, spilling over into every corner." The beau's response came as a shriek of delight from upstairs. "But I'm a dragon." Maya let out a sigh, leaned back in her chair, and closed her eyes for a brief moment, feeling the weight of the morning settle in on her. Elliot, meanwhile, groaned as he realized that the papers he had been frantically looking through were not the documents he needed for his 9 a.m. meeting. "It's like living in a tornado," he muttered, walking into the kitchen with a defeated look on his face. His eyes glanced over at Maya, hoping for a sense of solidarity. "Do you know where I put those sales reports? I could have sworn they were on the coffee table." Maya arched an eyebrow, but kept her eyes on her phone. "Are you sure they aren't in the car? You're always leaving things there." "I checked twice." He began pacing again. "I could have sworn." Before Elliot could finish, the kitchen was suddenly invaded by Jamie, still in his pajamas, with a cape made from a bath towel tied around his neck. His face was covered in marker streaks that were supposed to represent dragon scales, and his tall sword was raised high in the air. "I'm a dragon," he declared again, eyes wide with the kind of excitement only a 5-year-old could muster before 8 a.m. Jamie's face fell for a split second, but then he was off again, zooming around the kitchen island, the cape fluttering behind him as his parents tried to focus on their respective tasks. "I'm not going to survive this day," Elliot muttered, pulling his tie loose as if that would somehow make everything easier. "You say that every day," Maya replied dryly, finally lifting her head from the screen, "and yet somehow you do." Chapter 2. The Battle of the Bathroom. By 7:30 a.m. the kitchen chaos had migrated upstairs. The sound of running water echoed from the bathroom as Jamie pretended to brush his teeth while his father stood in front of the sink, trying to fix his tie in the mirror. It was one of those mornings when time seemed to slip through their fingers, moving faster than anyone could manage. Jamie insisted, as water dribbled down his chin, the toothbrush barely making contact with his teeth. His focus was already on the superhero action figure clutched in his other hand. Ellie glanced at the boy in the mirror and sighed. "That's not brushing, Jamie. That's... well, I don't know what that is. Here, let me." Before Elliot could finish his sentence, Jamie bolted out of the bathroom, his towel cape flapping behind him. leaving behind a trail of water drops on the floor. "Why do I even try?" Elliot mumbled, wiping at the toothpaste stains on his tie. He shot a quick glance at the clock on the wall and muttered a string of words under his breath that he definitely didn't want his son to overhear. Maya appeared in the doorway, hair now pulled into a neat bun and makeup half done. She was juggling her purse, a stack of files, and a jacket she was trying to put on without spilling everything. "I'm going to drop Jamie off at school today. You've got your meeting, and I have that pitch with the ad agency." Elliot nodded, grateful for the reprieve. "You're a saint. Remember that the next time I ask you to do laundry." He grinned weakly, then spotted the pile of clothes still untouched in the corner of the bedroom. Right, laundry. Meanwhile, Jamie was now running up and down the hallway, chanting a superhero theme song he had invented on the spot. Maya intercepted him on his fourth lap and tried to wrangle him into his school uniform. "Mama, I can't wear this. I'm a dragon. You're a student, and unless you're planning to breathe fire in kindergarten, you need to get dressed." Right now, her voice was stern but loving, and somehow, despite his protests, Jamie found himself in his uniform. Dragon dreams temporarily set aside. By 7:45 a.m., the Hallows family had managed to corral themselves into something resembling order. Maya had Jamie's backpack slung over one shoulder and her work files tucked under her arm. Elliot had finally found his missing sales report crammed under the passenger seat of the car, just as Maya had predicted. They all piled into the car, and for a moment there was silence as they pulled out of the driveway. It was a rare moment of calm in the sea of chaos that was their daily life. "I think we made it," Elliot said quietly, as though he didn't want to jinx it. Maya glanced in the rearview mirror at Jamie, who had already started humming his superhero theme song again, and smiled. "I wouldn't get too comfortable. The day's just getting started." Chapter 3. Schoolyard Showdown. By the time they arrived at the school drop-off, the morning rush was in full swing. Cars lined the street, and parents were hurriedly ushering their kids out of vehicles, while teachers waved them along from the curb. Jamie was halfway out of the car before Maya had even put it in park. "Bye, Mama. Bye, Daddy," he yelled, dashing toward the playground like it was his personal fortress. "Wait your lunchbox," Maya called after him, holding it out of the window. Jamie skidded to a stop, ran back, grabbed the lunchbox, and then sped off again with all the speed of a miniature tornado. "Good luck, Mrs. Hallows," a passing teacher said with a knowing smile as she saw Maya's flustered expression. Maya returned the smile weakly. "You too, Mrs. Davis." She watched Jamie disappear into the throng of children and leaned back against the headrest for a moment. The day had only just begun, but she was already feeling the weight of it. There were deadlines to meet, calls to make, and presentations to prepare for. Yet, despite the whirlwind, she couldn't help but smile. Ellie glanced at her from the passenger seat. "You all right?" She nodded. "Yeah, just you ever feel like we're always running, but never quite catching up all the time?" He paused, then added with a grin, "But at least we're running together." Maya chuckled. "True. I guess it's a lot easier to deal with when you're not doing it alone." They exchanged a look, an unspoken agreement that, despite the everyday madness, they were in this together. The little moments of calm, though fleeting, were what made the chaos bearable. Chapter 4. The office jungle. After dropping Jamie off, Maya drove toward her office in the city, where a different kind of chaos awaited her. Her office was on the 13th floor of a sleek, glass-covered building, part of an advertising firm that thrived on tight deadlines and last-minute ideas. The hallways were always buzzing with activity, and the constant hum of ringing phones and frantic typing filled the air. Maya stepped out of the elevator, already holding her phone to her ear. "Yes, Mr. Cooper, I'm on my way to the pitch meeting right now." "No, I'm not concerned about the timeline. We've got everything under control." She walked briskly down the hall, dodging interns carrying stacks of papers and designers discussing layouts for upcoming campaigns. It was like a beehive, each person moving with a purpose, but also contributing to the ever-present hum of barely controlled dropped her bag at her desk, quickly checked her emails, and then rushed into the conference room where her team was waiting. The pitch was to a big client, and everyone was on edge, hoping for a smooth presentation. But, of course, nothing ever went exactly as planned. The projector refused to work at first, causing a 5-minute delay. The client's lead representative showed up late, looking irritated, and the coffee spilled on the table.